Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So when you came to jury selection, you filled out a little questionnaire with some very basic questions. Do you remember doing that? I only bring that to your attention so that you don't think I have some secret way of finding out information about you.
No problem.
Couple things. You said that you have a close friend or relative in law enforcement.
Yes.
Who is that person or persons?
I've had a couple relatives in law enforcement. Last name Ward. As a cousin.
Here in Orange County?
It's in, where is he? Yeah, family member, but he is in, I'm blanking on the name, but it is in Orange County.
Okay. You said a couple. Is that the only one, or is there another one?
His father worked in law enforcement for a very long time, but he's passed away since.
I'm sorry to hear that. Did you ever speak to them about their work or more specifically about this case?
No.
Anything about your relationship with some relatives that are law enforcement officers, given that the victim in this case, the alleged victim, is a law enforcement officer, that you think would prevent you from being fair and impartial?
Nothing would prevent me, no.
Okay. You also indicated that you previously served as a juror.
Correct.
How long ago was that?
It was at least 10 years ago.
Was it here in Orange County?
It was not. It was in Pennsylvania.
Was it criminal or a civil case?
It was a civil case, a medical malpractice case.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
How long was your service?
About 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks.
Yes.
All right. I was joking when I said I'm sorry. What did you think about serving as a juror for that length of time?
It was, well, it was not sequestered. So it was very interesting. I felt like I was doing my civic duty and helping right either right a wrong or to bring justice in either case.
Okay. Would you view the opportunity to serve on this case similarly?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you'd do anything to get out of here, 10, you really want to be here, where would you put your participation or your desire to participate in this particular case?
I have to go with a 5.
Okay.
For the reasons that I really would want to is for what I just gave from the previous question.
Right.
But there's a lot of personal stuff, nothing that prevents me from serving, but I'm going to miss out on some things with my family and work in particular.
I saw that you have at least one child under the age of 18. Is that right?
2, yes.
You have 2.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tell me what it is, but anything, if we ask you to be here for the next, or for a 3-week period, are you going to hold it against any of us that you have to miss out? Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. All that said, now I want to ask you a little bit about the death penalty. The judge gave you an overview of the process. I think it's complicated, and I do this for a living, but I want to, before I go in and try to describe it all to you, did you understand what your role would be?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not going to duplicate that, all right? If you have a question about it, please let us know, but otherwise I'm just going to ask you some more general questions.
Okay.
The way you described your view of jury selection, of the death penalty, is a lot about the way the process actually works. And this is what I mean by that. I think I heard you tell the jury, that, the judge, that you, in the death of a child or a particular torturous event, would be, you didn't use the word aggravating, but it would irritate you or make you believe that that sense might be. Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Judge,
okay.
Judge.
So the only question I have is, did I hear you say that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. And in fact, because it doesn't have anything to do with this case, the murder of a small child under 12, is in fact an aggravating factor under Florida law. Because aggravating factors are common sense things that about the way a murder is committed or about...
He's not the legislator.
About the sensitivities of the victim, or even things about the defendant's background that make or heighten the severity the severity of a first-degree murder above one that doesn't have those things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. And we would have to present evidence to prove at least one of those beyond a reasonable doubt, or Mr. Loyd would never be eligible for a sentence of death, right?
Right.
Okay. The way the process works is we would do that, and if the jurors made that finding, they would move on to weigh any mitigating circumstances that the defense presented to you. And that would be things about the life, character, or background, or even the circumstances of the offense of the defendant. There are things that they would argue to you are reasons why a sentence of life without the possibility of parole is more appropriate than a sentence of death. And you would listen to those, okay? Mm-hmm. No matter what you believed or how you felt about the aggravating factors that are presented to you, or even about the way the murder was committed that you heard here in the first phase of the trial, you would need to listen to the mitigating circumstances. Do you think you could do that?
Yes.
Even if you found what you heard in the first phase to be very egregious, you think you could still wait and hold off on a decision until you listen to those mitigating circumstances?
Yes.
And I'm using the word listen. It's actually more than that. You have to be willing to give meaningful consideration to any mitigating circumstances. Do you see the difference between listening and meaningful consideration?
I do.
Right? Listen is, my wife wants to buy a boat. We don't have the money, but I'm hearing her. But meaningful consideration means I'll check it out.
I fully understand that. Yes.
Okay, good. Anything about your participation in this process that you think you couldn't do as we've described it and discussed it here today?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Have you or anyone close to you ever dealt with mental illness?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that? And I'm asking because of the insanity aspect of the case. Can you tell me about who that person is and describe the circumstances a little bit?
Yeah, I've got members of my family that are probably undiagnosed, but bipolar. So I've seen the behaviors that go along with that and are associated with that.
Okay. And what types of behaviors are you discussing?
Mood swings, sometimes energetic and the life of the party, and other times despondent and don't want to be around anybody else.
Okay. So these are family members that you've spent time with?
Yes.
You said undiagnosed. Have they not sought treatment for that?
I am not aware if they actually sought treatment for it, but the behaviors, as I understand them, are typically something that would be diagnosed as bipolar.
And the behaviors are serious enough in your mind to lead you to believe that they might have an actual mental illness?
Yes.
Anything about those experiences that would prevent you from fairly judging a not guilty by reason of insanity defense if it were presented to you?
No, there's nothing that would prevent me.
Okay. Is there anything else in your life or background experiences that you think we should know about you, given that we're trying to select the most fair and impartial jury that we can in this case?
Just my occupation, something to think about.
Tell me about that. I read what it was, but...
Yeah, I'm a safety asset protection manager for Lowe's, and I'm over most of Florida. I have 7 different buildings. A lot of my responsibilities deal with safety, keeping people safe, deal with the supply chain. So it's keeping people safe from injuries at work, workman's comp injuries and things like that. The other aspect of my job with asset protection is to investigate and sometimes interview people that are that have or could have stolen from the company, as an example.
Right.
Or sometimes I assist with threat assessments, threat of violence at work, and any kind of violence that would might happen on any of the facilities that I'm responsible for.
I think I know, but I don't want to assume. Why did you want to bring that to our attention in this case?
I think it's part of my background. I deal with law enforcement sometimes in that capacity. So I just wanted to make sure we're aware of that. Have a criminal justice degree as well, so something to know.
All right, thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry. One moment. Could I have a moment, Judge? I don't have anything else, sir. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. How are you doing, sir?
Good, how are you?
Appreciate you coming down, serving. So I want to go back over some stuff. And, you can imagine we are transcribing everything as it goes on. And so we also have the ability to read the transcript as it goes on.
Okay.
And there were some things that you were asked and you answered, and I just want to make sure they're right, okay?
Okay.
They were taken down right. And the question, the judge said, are there some cases that it would be automatic if the person is guilty? And you said yes. I'm sorry.
No problem.
It's on, Judge. All right.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Are there some cases that it would be automatic if that person is guilty? And you said yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then the judge asked you, okay, can you tell me what types of cases these are for you? And your answer was cases that had other circumstances in addition to murder.
I believe that's what I said.
Okay. So tell me what that means. Cases that had other circumstances in addition to murder.
Aggravating circumstances, which I think was part of my original answer as well. Just aggravating factors. If it was, murder involves several different things, but if it involved, like I had said before, involved children
Right.
in some way, torture,
Right.
something, obviously premeditation.
All right. So when you were talking about cases that had other circumstances in addition to murder, you were saying, so I'm clear, that there are cases you believe the death penalty should be automatic, and that would be based on, in those cases, there were other circumstances in addition to murder. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you just mentioned, because I think you say here, and I'm going to read this, I think that if it involves anything that involves a child, a murder, or anything that involves some of the circumstances, possibly torture or things like that. Is that correct?
Yes, I think if it involves, we have to take everything into account. We're dealing with hypotheticals.
Sure.
But yeah, that is what I said.
Okay. And so you haven't heard all the evidence in this case, obviously.
Correct.
So you do know that in this particular case, Mr. Loyd has been convicted of a previous murder, an attempted murder, maybe 2 or 3 attempted murders, possession of a firearm by convicted felon. So those are circumstances that obviously are going to go into the penalty phase if we get to the penalty phase. You understand that?
I understand that.
Right,
Yeah,
and you
yes.
can't use it in the first. I think the judge made that clear. The first part of the case, you can't use it.
I understand that.
And what she was kind of saying, without saying, is that there may be another time, and the other time is the penalty phase.
Right.
Okay, so my question is that in the situation that there are other circumstances in addition to murder, if you found out that there was another murder and a bunch of attempted murders, would that mean to you, would you believe that they should get an automatic death penalty?
I think
Objection.
Okay, now, that means you can't answer the question.
Understood.
Okay. So you had talked about, well, let me ask you something. Generally, and I don't want to get too deep, but generally, what is your faith, your belief in faith? Where are you at that?
I'm Catholic.
Okay, I'm Catholic. And do you have a position on abortion? Abortion.
Objection as to the relevance of that question.
Okay, sir.
All right, you may inquire.
Okay, so, and you'll get where I'm going with this in a second, but I have to
Okay.
ask you a specific question. When you are talking about a child, what do you mean in regards to a child?
Do you have your mic on? Because I don't think you do.
Yeah, it's on, Judge.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead.
Child, a baby up to 18, 17 years old.
Okay. Can I ask my next question, Judge?
No, I think he's answered the question.
Okay, so in this particular case, you have to judge, if we get to the point where you're sitting as a juror on the death penalty issue, you would have to judge and determine whether an aggravating factor has been proven. Okay? It has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And you would also have to determine what weight to give it. Okay?
Okay.
So that's basically what your responsibility in what I'm about to talk to you about is, okay?
Okay.
So you mentioned child. Now you have a responsibility to weigh a conviction for a fetus.
Objection.
Sister.
I'm sorry, Judge, I don't understand the court's ruling.
Yes, you do. It's sustained. Sir, move on.
Now, you had brought out voluntarily letting us know about, I guess, some family members who are in law enforcement, and also the connection you have to law enforcement as a safety manager, and what part of your responsibilities that you have to do in regards to that.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Now, I know you answered earlier that the fact that this is a killing involving a police officer would not affect you.
Correct.
Do you believe that you could set aside your relationships with all those folks and not let it influence you in your decision-making process?
Yes.
Okay. You have no doubt about that?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what is your actual, if I was sitting across from you in a restaurant, you knew me, we were familiar with each other, and I said to you, what is your thoughts about the death penalty? How would you describe your thoughts and feelings, that kind of thing about the death penalty?
My feeling is that it has its place, as I described earlier. I think our justice system, if we were sitting across from each other, does a pretty good job at making sure that people that are innocent don't get the death penalty.
And why would that come up in your conversation? Why that particular point about that people aren't going to death row who are innocent? How would that come up in your conversation, and why?
I think that our system, is, unlike a lot of countries, is designed that 100 guilty people go free before one innocent person will be found guilty. And with all the appeals and all the different things that we have in place, I think it's very difficult to get to that point where somebody would be on death row.
Okay. And so where does, I guess, and this may be the wrong words, but where does your moral compass fit in regards to you being a Catholic? I think you said you were Catholic.
Yes.
And the death penalty, and obviously being a citizen, a law-abiding citizen. Could you tell me about that?
Thou shalt not kill is one of the things you learn growing up Christian, much less Catholic. But I, again, think that the death penalty has its place in our society.
Do you think its place is in regards to it being a deterrent or a punishment?
I think it,
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Okay. What further role do you believe the death penalty plays than what we've talked about?
I think it brings closure to at least some families, family members. It's final. If that's what's deemed necessary, then there won't be any more killings
Okay.
from that point forward.
And where would you fall, like if we had a line where if you were 1, you never voted for the death penalty, if you were 10, you always voted for the death penalty? Where on that would you fall? Where would you place yourself, your belief in your...
I'm not sure I understand the question. It's
Okay, so I'm asking you about what your thoughts are on where you stand on a numbered line, recognizing your position on the death penalty. If you were a 1, you would never vote for the death penalty. If you were 10, you would always vote for the death penalty. So where on that line would you place yourself?
I just don't know if I can quantify it like that. I think my description of the death penalty involves a lot of different factors.
Okay.
And if we had the death rules changed about what could constitute the death penalty, obviously that would change that greatly.
Now, you said there's a lot of different factors involved. What about the factors of your responsibility and your participation in looking at and weighing mitigating factors? Where does that fall in terms of the importance? Because you told me about how this is foreclosures, and we have a system where it's infallible and no one's going to slip through.
I don't believe it's infallible.
Okay, so you
But
believe that
it's
there are
designed
mistakes,
to
but
prevent that.
it's kind of a statistics thing in your mind that, okay, every once in a while we lost a person or whatever, but you still believe that the death penalty has more value than shutting down the death penalty.
I believe that I stand by what I said before. The death penalty has its place.
Okay. Now, there are potential mitigating factors that may or may not apply in this case. And I'm going to ask you about whether you can consider these factors in your decision on whether to vote for life or not. Okay, these are just factors. Now, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
There are some people that no matter what, they will never consider drugs as a mitigating factor. It's a personal choice. I'm never going to look at that. I'm not going to consider that. That's not you, is it?
No.
Okay. So what about mental illness? Would you be able to consider that as a mitigating factor?
I would consider that as part of the...
Okay. And what about if a person, generally speaking, has suffered some sort of racism in their life leading up to the event, that there is evidence presented to you that it affects them in some way or manner. Would you be able to consider that?
I would consider that.
Okay. And certainly trauma. If someone suffered trauma as a child or otherwise, you would be able to consider that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, I just want to share some quick things with you, and then we'll be done. I appreciate you being patient with me.
No
sir.
problem.
Okay. So this is generally, and the judge talked about this, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page in this. This is generally how the death penalty issues work here in Florida. Obviously, Mr. Loyd has to be convicted of first-degree murder for the death penalty to be in play, meaning a penalty phase with a jury that has already heard the evidence. You understand that?
I understand.
Okay. At that trial, the state would put on additional evidence of aggravation, just like the Dixon cases. That would be considered aggravation that they're offering on those that murder and those attempted murders, and whatever else they want to attach to the case itself, Sergeant Clayton's case, that would be.
Restate the question.
All right, so
Judges.
there's going to be aggravating factors.
Understood.
You have to decide whether those aggravating factors, one or more of them, were proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Understood.
Okay. There's mitigating factors. There's a lesser standard than beyond a reasonable doubt, but there still has to be proof.
Correct. I understand.
So you have to decide those. The first thing you're going to decide is collectively as a jury. Collectively as a jury, you have to find at least one aggravating factor existed or exists beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, you could believe it's one aggravating factor, the person next to you can believe it's another, but as long as you believe that was proven beyond a reasonable doubt and it's unanimous by the jury, then we go to the next step. You with me? Okay. Then after that point, it's all about you. You make the decision on everything else, even the final decision on what Mr. Loyd lives or dies. So after that step we just talked about, then you're going to look to the aggravating factors, decide whether they're proven beyond a reasonable doubt, look to the mitigating circumstances as we talked about, and then you're going to weigh those. You're going to weigh each of those individually, collectively. It's your decision on how you want to weigh whatever, okay? You with me?
Understood.
And then after you weigh each of those, then you're going to decide first whether the mitigating circumstances outweigh the aggravating circumstances. If they do, then you have to vote for life. With me?
Understood.
Okay. If the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors, you may vote for death. But the law says you're never required to vote for death. So a juror can, on their own, come up with any other reason, even if the aggravators outweigh the mitigators, that they're going to vote for life. You follow me?
Understood.
Once you do that, make that decision, then everyone is going to basically put their decision in a bowl, and if there's a unanimous decision by the jury, all 12, then that would for death, then that would be a death vote, okay? If there's one juror that says life, then that would be a life vote. You follow me?
I do.
So it has to be unanimous.
Understood.
So the first question I have for you on that, and we're almost done, is that if you believe in whatever you believe, life, death, whatever it is, and you come to that decision and you're comfortable with that decision, are you going to allow anybody to change your mind?
No.
Okay. And conversely, if there are other jurors that can't come to a decision, and it may be an opposite of yours, are you going to try to force them or talk them into making a decision like yours?
I would not force anybody or anything like that.
Okay. Would you respect their decision?
I would.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I took so much time.
That's no problem. You're welcome.
Sir, I have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question for
Okay.
you. And I just want to clarify something with you. Is there anything that you've heard that I've told you, that anyone has told you about this case that would lead you to automatically vote for death if Mr. Loyd was convicted?
No.
Well, let me
All right,
ask
thank
that
you.
question.
Anybody need to approach?
I'm sorry?
Anybody need to approach?
Yeah, Judge, let me just read something into the record.
Nope, not over here. All right. All right, sir. Appreciate your patience. We're going to send you through to a final round of questioning in this case,
Okay.
which means that you are now a purple juror, you're no longer yellow, you're purple. And the reason is when you call it's because of the number of people being called. We just use colors to tell people to come back.
Understood.
All right, so we're going to give you a sequestration package. This next time is the last time we'll be asking questions, and we will be selecting the jury from that. So you will need to pack a suitcase and just leave it in your car, because if you're selected for the jury, the purple day is the day you're going into sequestration. So bring your suitcase with you. Just leave it in your car. If you're picked,
Understood.
we'll go get it. If not, no worries. We're handing you the sequestration package. It has a lot of information about being a sequestered juror, and it also has a slip of paper with a phone number that you are going to start calling this Friday afternoon after 5. I don't know when the purple group's coming back, because I have no idea how many people. I mean, I don't know when I'm going to get to all the people I need. So call. What you're listening for is for them to say the purple group returns on this date at this hour. We'll give you more than 5 hours of notice. You just call every day. So call Friday at 5, then call Monday at 5 or after 5, and you'll hear the recorded message. Eventually, you'll hear that you need to return. Any
Okay.
questions?
The same number that I called in originally to see
Correct.
if I
And
needed to show up.
We gave it to you on the slip again so that you have it. All right? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Free to go. Have a good afternoon.
You as well. Thank you.
And folks, we're going to take a 10-minute break before we continue with this. Mr. Buxman, did you need something?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
Rising out of habit, I'm sorry.
No, it's no problem. Thanks.